Hey, today I'm wearing my Evolution of a Canadian shirt. Why is he wearing this or pointing this out to us if this thing is about conditionals? Well, I guess if you were Canadian, you would play hockey. See, you've already learned something. That's a conditional. You know conditionals, it's all good. Okay, maybe you don't know all about conditionals yet, but this is part one of part two of a two-part video where I explain the zero, the first, the second, the third conditional, mixed, and all sorts of advanced little things that, maybe your teachers haven't told you. So stay tuned right here for part one, and then for part two, this is going to be great. I think it's really going to help you guys with your conditionals. I'll also point out some things that native speakers say that may not be grammatical, but it's accepted. So I'll point that out too. So stick around, give a like, subscribe. We're going to learn all about conditionals. Alright, so let's start with the zero conditional. The zero conditional, it's really simple. If plus present simple plus present simple. Okay, so if you don't brush your teeth, they rot. That's just sort of a, general statement of fact. If you don't brush your teeth, they rot. They get all black and... Anyway, don't want to talk about that. That's not the point of this video, to gross you out. But if you don't brush your teeth, they rot. See, if you don't brush, that's present simple, they rot. Present simple. Okay, so present simple in both. Another example is if you eat a lot, you get fat. Unfortunately, that's, how God made us. If you eat a lot, you get fat. Okay, so if you eat, present simple, you a lot, you get present simple fat. Okay, that's the zero conditional. Very simple. I don't know if you guys can hear this, but some beautiful birds are chirping outside right now. They're happy. Yes. So let's move on to the first conditional. The first conditional is if plus present plus future with will or going to. Okay, let's focus on will for this video. So if we don't see each other tomorrow, we will see each other next week. Okay, what does this represent? It's a condition, right? If this thing happens, then this will happen. All right, if this thing doesn't happen, then this will happen. Or if this thing doesn't happen, then this won't happen. Okay, so it's a condition, okay, that's a reality, okay, that's likely. Okay, so if we don't see each other tomorrow, don't worry about it, okay? We'll see each other next week. If we don't see, okay, each other means, us. If we don't see each other tomorrow, we will see each other next week. We will see with will. Don't see present, right? So if plus present plus will. Before I forget, if you start the sentence with if, then you put a comma between the two clauses, okay? That's grammar terminology, but between the two parts, okay? So you put a comma. But if you guys can switch the formula around like math, and you can say, we'll see each other next week if we don't see each other tomorrow. And in that case, no comma. No little comma, no comma, okay? So in that case, no comma. Another example, if Maria comes to the party tomorrow, okay, Marco will also come. Why will Marco come only if Maria comes? Because Marco likes Maria. He's, he has a crush on her, a secret crush. He loves her. So Marco, there's this condition because he only wants to go to the party if Maria goes to the party. So if Maria goes to the party, Marco will also go to the party. Okay? Simple as that. Simple as that. If you wanted to switch that, like I said before, Marco will also go to the party, okay, if Maria goes to the party. Simple as that. All right? So that's that for the first conditional. A sort of side note on the first conditional, we can also use the imperative. Okay? So if plus present plus the imperative, if you want to give an order, sort of, right? So for example, if you are hungry, my mom would say this to me. I'd say, "Ma, I'm hungry." And she'd say, "If you're hungry, eat something," right? There's food in the fridge. There's food in the cupboards. Get it yourself. Okay? So if you are hungry, if you are present, simple, hungry, eat something. Imperative, eat something. Okay, so you have that too. That exists as well. Okay? Now, we've covered that. Let's move on to the second conditional, which is very, very interesting. So the way I like to explain the second conditional to my students is by saying it's a hypothetical now, in the present, okay? What's a hypothetical? It's something that's, almost impossible or very, very unlikely to happen, okay? A hypothetical now. An example of this is if I ate less and exercised more, I would be just as fit as Usain Bolt. Okay, that's a big if, okay, and I still don't think you'd be as fit as he is, but that's the if, right? It's a big condition that's hypothetical now. Notice I'm talking if I ate. Okay, so the second conditional is formed like this: if plus the past plus would plus verb. All right, so if I ate less and exercised more, so you see both past there, I would be just as fit as Usain Bolt. Okay, that's a bit iffy. I don't think so, but you could say it, right? Also, the example I gave you before, right? If you were Canadian, you would play hockey. Okay? Yeah, not all Canadians play hockey, but I play hockey. It's fun. And a lot of Canadians do, but that's a stereotype, right? I think. But yeah, if you were Canadian, notice, guys, with to be is the one exception. So it's always if plus past plus would plus verb. But with to be, even if we set it with, he or she or it or whatever, whichever subject, it's always were. Okay, it's always were. So we don't say if he was rich, he would buy a mansion. Okay. Wait, do we say that? Oh yeah, native speakers say that all the time. So you'll hear if he was rich all the time. So you don't have to worry too much about that. But technically, the grammatical way to do of doing it, guys, is that if he were rich, not if he was. So it's always if plus past plus would plus verb. But for the verb to be, use were. If you want to be grammatical, I don't know if you heard that, my voice went all weird there. But if you want to be informal or talk like a lot of native speakers talk, you could say, if I was rich, I'd buy a mansion. Okay, do what you want, because remember, guys, language is about communication. It's not, I don't think it's all about being right all the time. But yeah, do as you please, okay? The second conditional can also be used to give advice, right? I could say, Well, if I were you, I wouldn't take the 401 today. It's jammed. Okay, the 401's this big highway in Canada. And specifically in Toronto, it's always jammed, right? Jammed means there's tons of traffic. It's backed up, another way of saying that. So if I were you, so I'm giving someone advice. So you can, a lot of times we give advice by saying, if I were you, all right? If I were you, I wouldn't take the 401 today. If you want to be informal, if I was you, I wouldn't, take the 401 today. So that's the second conditional, right, guys? A hypothetical now. Let's move on to the third conditional. So the way I explain the third conditional to my students is sort of like I explained the second. I just say it's a hypothetical, but in the past. So it's something that's in the past, we can't change it now. But we're saying if this had happened in the past, this would have been the result. Okay, so you want to look back sort of retrospectively on something that happened. So you could say, for example, if I hadn't farted during my job interview, they would have given me the job. Okay, that's a bit of a weird example, but and embarrassing, but it's a funny one for you to remember. So if I hadn't farted during my job interview, they would have given me the job. If I hadn't farted, notice the form. If plus past perfect. How do you form the past perfect? It's had, right, plus the past participle, right? So if I hadn't farted, okay, they would have given me. So the second part of the clause is they would have given. That's would plus have plus the past participle. All right, so that's one example. Let's do another example. So we could say, I know Stefano has a job now. Okay, I know he has a job now. But if he had put more effort into his job search, he would have gotten or got. Either one, because remember the past participle of to get can be got or gotten. He would have gotten a job much sooner. Okay, so if he had put more effort, notice if he had put subject, right? If plus subject plus the past participle, which is if, right? He had put. Okay, the past participle of put is put. So if he had put more effort into his job search, he would have got or he would have gotten a job much sooner. One thing I do want to mention here is that native speakers do tend to bend the rules a bit in this area. You guys may hear if he would have put more effort into his job search, he would have found a job much sooner. Okay, you may hear that with the would have in both clauses. Technically that's not grammatical, but you do hear it. So if you find it too difficult to do the mix between past perfect and the would plus have plus the past participle, sometimes referred to as the past conditional, then just do would have plus past participle in both. I know I'm supposed to be a teacher and say only do this, but remember, guys, you're here to learn English to communicate, not to memorize a grammar book. Okay, so if you find it too hard, then use would have in both. Where I think the confusion lies, even for native speakers, is that this apostrophe D can represent had or would. Let me give you an example. So if we have, if he'd picked him up, he'd have been on time. Okay, notice we have the apostrophe D in both, but they represent different things. In the first one, if he'd picked him up, that's, apostrophe D, had. If he had picked him up, he would have been, he'd have been, right? So you can see that there too. So this is where there's this confusion with the apostrophes and when to use had and would. That's where I think the confusion lies. Remember guys, even in the second conditional, you can use apostrophe D in the second clause. So if I were you, I would, right, I'd give him a call. If I were you, I would give him a call. So, take note of that apostrophe. Guys, what I like to tell my students is that these conditionals, are tricky, but don't worry so much about the rules because native speakers bend them a lot. Just make sure you choose one of the two forms. If you like the would have, I know some people are going to scream at me and say that's so bad, but is it really if a lot of people use it? You're learning English. If you find that easier, do it, okay? If you're writing a test, obviously, don't do it, okay? But if you're speaking or learning to speak, then go ahead and do it. I think that's it for today, or maybe not. Maybe you want to move on to part 2. So go over to part 2. Link will be in the description as soon as that's out. And yeah, guys, in part 2, we're going to talk about how we use modals in conditionals, how we use, unless, or how we can start a conditional without if. That's interesting. I think that's very common actually, used by native speakers. So I think maybe you want to check that video out. So check out part 2 of this video. Thank you so much, guys. God bless you. Yes, look in the comment section, comment down below with your questions or anything you want to ask me about conditionals. I'm sure you've heard a lot of different things. And if you want some, clarification, I'm here for you guys. So that's it for today. Thank you. See you in part 2. Bye-bye. Don't forget, like, subscribe. Thanks. Bye.